You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Hey everybody, my name's Chris, this is Jeff, and we are...
The Bible Guys.
The Bible Guys. I like that. That's good. The voice, The Bible Guys.
Yeah, there you go.
So, and by the way, you could get that rasp there, I heard it.
I can put it there.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, today we are excited because Desiree has given us the opportunity, the ability to read a news article, and we love giving the most reliable news.
Yeah, from only the most reliable sources.
That's right.
Which for us is the Babylon Bee.
Yes.
If you don't know, it's a satire website. Very funny stuff. And today says Instagram algorithm senses wife tired, in bed, ready to buy whatever.
And by the way, you can't see it, but there's a picture of this woman lying in bed on their phone. The glow is on her screen, and she's got a smile on her face.
That's right, because she's ready to buy whatever.
Oh, my goodness.
Salt Lake City, Utah. The algorithm that dictates ads on Instagram sprang into action as Rachel Myers settled into bed, the app sensing she was tired and ready to buy literally anything it put in front of her.
It's so funny.
Instagram has worked for years attempting to discover precisely when a wife is at both her most exhausted and most comfortable, and then to strike.
Do you believe that's true?
I do believe that's true.
Because that is incredibly smart.
I think so. Oh, those pants are cute, and they're on sale, and if I give them my email address, they'll take 10% off my order, Myers said, her eyes barely open. Wow, look at those gardening gloves. I definitely need those. And this lady has an ergonomic mouse. Ooh, how about this matching apron and bonnet combo? Bonnets are making a comeback, added. Though ostensibly checking Instagram to see what a couple friends had posted, only minutes later, Myers had loaded 73 new items into her online cart.
Oh, my goodness.
Quote, the algorithm is truly amazing. If it times it right, wives will buy literally anything, said Instagram software engineer David Kahn. They'll buy dog food even though they don't own a dog. The defenses to the bank account are zilch during that little window before she falls asleep. At publishing time, Myers' husband had quietly pulled his wife's phone out of her hand as she fell asleep, quickly canceling her order for a jumbo ant farm.
That is so funny. A jumbo ant farm.
That's so funny. Yep.
That's really good.
I told my wife one time, she told me she got some stuff.
Yeah.
We've had a run since we moved into our new house.
Oh, yeah.
Where the Amazon guy comes like every day.
Yeah,
every day.
That's me every day, no matter what.
Yeah, and so...
By the way, I'm not kidding.
Yeah?
No, I'm not kidding.
Yeah?
It's sometimes 5-6 packages a day.
Part of your family?
What's that?
Is the Amazon guy part of your family now?
Oh, yeah. We
just
know,
invite him in.
We know them.
Backyard barbecue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I told my wife, I said, why do we keep getting all these packages? She said, well, I'm getting some really good after Christmas sales, really good.
Yeah.
We're saving a lot of money. I said, I can't afford to save this much money.
Right.
Right. So,
hey, by the way, let me be clear. My wife doesn't order extravagant things. She orders like deodorant.
Oh, sure.
Or
sure.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or just
saves a trip to the store.
Yeah, that's right. Like paper towels come in Amazon packages, right? Yeah. So I don't want people to misinterpret like she's not a shopper. Like hey, I bought this diamond ring, and like this thing that this woman has in the ad of bonnets and things. That is not her.
No,
she just swipes to do her grocery shopping a lot of times.
Well, I saw a light sweat start breaking out on your brow after you mentioned that 5 packages a day come to your house, and you thought, I need to make sure everybody knows my wife's not wasting money.
Oh no. She's not.
You had a look of terror in your eyes.
She doesn't do that. And by the way, she'll even tell me, because I'll come home and I will literally complain, and I'll go, there's 5 packages. Yeah. And then she'll open them up and she's like, paper towels, really? Mm-hmm. And I said, why do you buy paper towels there? Why don't you just grab them at Kroger? And she says, believe it or not, it's cheaper. And by the way, that is incredibly hard to believe. Yeah. It's cheaper. So how is that even possible that it's cheaper? And it's because Amazon is a conglomerate, right? Yeah. So it's like that's how big Amazon is, where somehow you can buy a regular item through Amazon and have it, by the way, delivered to your house the next day.
Or that day.
Yeah. And somehow you save 40 cents.
Yeah. Go figure.
How is that even possible?
I don't know.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy.
Of course, all that packaging, we're cutting down a million trees so we can save 40 cents, but that's okay.
Right. It's not good for the world. Yeah. But I had a guy who worked at our church. His name was Carl, and he was the communications director, and he was in charge of all printing. And people always used to approach him about like all the paper that he's wasting, all the trees that he's cutting down. Right. And he used to say, that trees are replaceable product,
Yeah, we
right?
just need to replant more trees.
He's like, that people, he goes, we're not going to run out of trees. He's like, there's no way that we can run out of trees.
Right.
He goes, if you think about how many sheets of paper come from a tree, he's like, there's no danger in running out of trees.
We just have to, where it gets bad is where we're burning them and then we're not replanting.
Right.
So anyways, talking about planting.
Ooh.
Today, Amos has a vision of ripe fruit.
Which is planted
on a tree. Well, trees get planted and then fruit grows on trees. Yeah.
Well, you should have said, speaking of trees.
Speaking of trees.
That's what you should have said.
Speaking of trees, yes.
Darn it, you almost had it.
Almost.
But you said planted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of planting and trees.
Try it again.
Speaking of planting trees.
There it is.
There you go.
There it is.
Yes. That is terrible. So we are in the book of Amos.
Yes.
Everybody's famous Amos.
Yes.
Everybody's favorite book.
And this is a vision, another vision that God has given, only this is a vision of ripe fruit. And apparently we're walking through every bit of Amos.
Every bit.
Every bit.
Every bit.
But that's okay.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to guess most of our listeners have never read every bit of Amos.
Well, I would say that's true. Well, think about it.
I think most Christians don't spend a ton of time in Amos.
That's correct. And by the way, I'm a Christian and I'm a pastor for decades. Yeah. And I have to confess, it's been a while since I've read through the book of Amos.
Well, here we are.
Every verse.
Good.
But I have done it before, Jeff.
Yes, so have I.
But you implied that I have not.
I did not. I did not.
You joked.
I just said
you joked.
I have a few favorite verses in the book of Amos.
Like, well, I read it, Chris.
Yeah.
It's
amazing how much of the Bible you know when you read it.
Right.
Okay. Amos chapter 8, verse 1 says, Then the sovereign Lord showed me another vision. In it I saw a basket filled with ripe fruit. What do you see, Amos? He asked. I replied, a basket full of ripe fruit. Then the Lord said, Like this fruit, Israel is ripe for punishment. I will not delay their punishment again. In that day, the singing in the temple will turn to wailing. Dead bodies will be scattered everywhere. They will be carried out of the city in silence. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. Listen to this, you who rob the poor and trample down the needy. You can't wait for the Sabbath day to be over and the religious festivals to end so you can get back to cheating the helpless. You measure out grain with dishonest measures and cheat the buyer with dishonest scales. You mix the grain you sell with chaff swept from the floor. Then you enslave poor people for one piece of silver or a pair of sandals. Now the Lord has sworn his oath by his own name, the pride of Israel. I will never forget the wicked things you've done. The earth will tremble for your deeds, and everyone will mourn. The ground will rise like the Nile River at flood time. It'll heave up and then sink again. In that day, says the sovereign Lord, I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth while it is still day, and I'll turn your celebrations into times of mourning and your singing into weeping. You will wear funeral clothes and shave your heads to show your sorrow as if your only son had died. How very bitter that day will be. The time is surely coming, says the sovereign Lord, when I will send a famine on the land, not a famine of bread or water, but of hearing the words of the Lord. People will stagger from sea to sea and wander from border to border, searching for the word of the Lord, but they will not find it. Beautiful girls and strong men will grow faint in that day, thirsting for the Lord's word. Those who swear by the shameful idols of Samaria, who take oaths in the name of the God of Dan and make vows in the name of the God of Beersheba, they will all fall down, never to rise again. Is that it?
Oof. Yeah, that's it, for sure. Wow. So,
well, there you go.
Well, there it is, another vision and a very strong warning, and some of the same references, right? Like enslaved people for one piece of silver or a pair of sandals, right? That's been mentioned before. Cheating the buyer with dishonest scales, that's been mentioned before. Religious festivals, cheating the helpless, dishonest measures. So again, just a reiteration, right? There's a note in our Life Application Study Bible on these verses, and it says, these merchants were keeping the religious festivals, but not with a right spirit. They couldn't wait for the holy days and Sabbaths to be over so they can go back to making money. Their real interest was enriching themselves, even if that meant cheating. And then in parentheses it says, shortchanging the quantity while boosting the price, or even selling chaff as wheat. Wow. And by the way, chaff is the bad part of wheat, right?
Right. The unusable part.
Yeah, the unusable part. Do you take a day to rest and worship God at least one day a week, or is making money more important to you? Ooh, there's a sermon.
Yep.
Or is making money more important to you than anything else? When you give your time to God, is your heart in worship, or is your only religion only a front for unethical practices. So that's small writing right there. I'm starting to need my glasses. Yeah. That sermon right there is that the Sabbath day is included in that little sermon, right?
Yeah.
So do you remember there was a song a long time ago by Rascal Flatts where it talked about Sunday used to be a day of rest. Do you remember? You don't remember the song. I see Mayberry sitting on the porch drinking ice cold cherry Coke, where everything is black and white. Da 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 da. Anyway, so he's talking about the good old days.
Right.
That's what he's saying.
Right.
And in that song, he says Sunday used to be a day of rest, and now it's a day of making more money.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I thought that was so interesting that Rascal Flatts is talking about the good old days, and what he's really doing is just sort of including right here this passage that Sunday people used to respect Sunday. They used to say, nope, we're not going to make Sunday a day of working. Sunday's a day of rest. And even in the olden days, in our lifetime, right, we've seen it. Our fathers probably grew up with the mentality that nobody's going to work on Sunday, and yet now they do.
Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it?
Well, if you look at it, I think that there's, as you go through all these judgments, obviously he's already been frustrated with the fact that they're selling slaves and they're abusing the poor and all these things. So, like you said, he's covered these things, but I think God drives home when God repeats a thing. It's because he's trying to drive home what a big deal it is, right? So if he repeats himself, he's not just stuttering.
Right.
It's not like, did I already say this or not? Well, let me say it again, right?
Did I say that last service?
Yeah, exactly. So he's saying it on purpose. And when you look at all of these things, how bad this judgment is, right? There's going to be dead bodies scattered everywhere. You're going to be carried out of the city in silence. You're going to be hauled away. The punishment's coming. I'm not going to delay. These are really, the singing is going to stop and it's just going to be dead bodies. That's pretty horrific description, right?
Sure. Then
you read and find out why. Because you said you were selling 12 ounces and you only sold 11.
Mm-hmm.
You said you were going to loan at a good interest rate and you loaned at an abusive interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
You said you were selling one thing, but you watered down the product.
Right.
That's and you're skipping the Sabbath day.
Mm-hmm.
So we think God brings judgment for big stuff, murder, adultery, right? God's saying, if you claim you're selling 12 ounces, sell 12 ounces.
Right.
Or you're ripping off the poor.
Right.
And I hate that. Hate it.
Yeah, he loathes it.
Right? If you're saying that you're going to sell a specific product, sell that product. God hates dishonesty. And he's saying there's going to be dead bodies everywhere over your bad business practices.
Yeah.
Right? So earlier he goes, I'm so sick of your fake worship. So don't you understand? Sunday and Monday are the same to God.
Mm-hmm.
Right? God expects the guy you're pretending to be on Sunday to be the real guy you are on Monday. That's what he's expecting. And he's not talking to religious leaders here. He's talking to businessmen and businesswomen. That's what he's talking to. And he's using a shepherd and a farmer to come and talk to him about it.
Right.
These are everyday normal people. This isn't St. Amos. This isn't St. Chris Zarbaugh.
Or St. Jeff Forster.
That's right. This is a normal guy talking to business people about how God views everyday life.
Yeah, that's good. And when he says cheat the buyer with dishonest scales, he's talking about the scales of justice, where one thing's supposed to weigh exactly as the other. You weigh out.
Not the scales of justice. These are business scales.
Oh, well, something like the scales of justice.
Where you're going to use the scales like that.
Yeah, something similar, right?
Yes.
They weren't exactly the scales of justice, but a similar mechanism where they would have.
It would be balanced on the top, and then you'd have a specific weight on one side worth of value.
That's right.
And then you put the grain or the metal or whatever you're buying on the other side and weigh it out. You're paying by the pound or whatever.
Yeah, and then they would do that. They would cheat it by removing, right? And they would say it's a certain amount, but it's really not.
So what they would do is so let's say we're going to buy it by the ounce, and we would have weights on the one side that would be 1 ounce, 5 ounces, 10 ounces. So if it was something I'm weighing to where I'm going to have to pay you, and I'm the one controlling, sometimes I would drill out the inside, hollow it out,
Right.
and make it lighter by a few ounces, right? So that way I'd pay less. But if it was for my advantage, where I'm charging you, then I would have a different set of fake weights where I drill it out and put lead inside and make it just a little heavier. So then that way I'm able to charge you more. Oh, you bought 9. So you ever go to the butcher shop? Have you ever noticed you go to the butcher shop and say, hey, I need 3 pounds of salmon, and they give you 3.5 pounds of salmon?
Right.
Is that enough? And I always go, yeah, that's fine. But that's kind of the idea, was what you think you're buying versus what they actually sell you are different things.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's a dishonest thing, because I'm letting it happen in that moment. But what they were doing is they were sneaking. They were always ripping everybody off.
Yeah.
all the time.
At least the butcher's calling it for what it is.
Yeah. He said, hey, it's 3.5 pounds. Is that good?
Right. Yeah.
But that's maybe the closest thing that our listeners have had to this.
Right.
But what they were doing was they were skewing. They'd have 2 sets of weights. And they'd be either heavier or lighter based on
it's like loaded dice.
Who was paying what? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the old trick of loaded dice means no matter what you do, it's always going to roll a 7 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So and by the way, loaded dice is also in the Bible.
Yeah.
Loaded dice, right?
So this idea of being people of integrity all the time, giving the product that you say you're giving the service that you're claiming you're serving. Those of you that have the ability to bill, maybe you're a CPA or an attorney or something. If you charge for half an hour, you better have done a half hour's worth of work,
right?
In God's mind, or judgment's coming. That's kind of his attitude about it, right? If you're charging or you're billing, right now, there's all this auditing happening in our federal government, right, with Doge and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not passing judgment one way or the other on whether or not that's all a great idea, but the federal government, and by the way, the state of Michigan, they don't get audited, right? So all of a sudden they're being audited now, and they're finding out there's billions of dollars worth of waste, dishonest decisions, bad waste, or horrifically bad management, right? So it's dishonesty or bad management. Either way,
one of the two.
It's time to fix it, right? Billions and billions of dollars of this stuff. That kind of stuff makes God sick when there's people who go, oh, well, it's just tax money. It's just whatever. God's like, no, you be faithful. It's expected of a man who's a steward to be found faithful. That's what God says. It's required of them. And so this unfaithfulness with regard to how we do our business, God says the singing in my temple is going to stop, and it's going to be dead bodies everywhere if they don't get this turned around. So we think, wink, wink. It's just how business gets done. There's a little bit for you, a little bit for me, a little bit for you, a little bit for me, right? And that's how business is done. God goes, nope, that's not how it does. Not my people. If that's the way the world does it, that's the way the world does it, but not my people. Be people of integrity. And I think that there's an opportunity in our society today for businessmen and women to stand out by celebrating the fact, by being people of integrity, by giving better service than what you're claiming, by always going above and beyond. And you will build a great group of loyal customers. My dad owned a company. He owned a refrigeration company. And there's a lot of scamming in the refrigeration world. The reason is you don't know anything about it at all. Right? Nothing. You don't know anything. So we can come in, and maybe it's just a timer that we need, but we can sell you, it costs you $40 to get the timer fixed or something, or there's a little heater in there to defrost stuff. But we'll go, oh man, you need a new compressor. New compressor can cost you $1,100, right, on your thing. And grocery store owners and restaurant owners go, it's costing me money to have it be broken down. Go ahead. And so there's all kinds of scam artists in the refrigeration world. So my dad decided I'm going to go the other way. So he all of his advertisements, honesty and integrity are our motto. And Forster's Refrigeration became really famous all throughout the thumb that, hey, you can trust Glenn Forster. And my dad, on so many occasions, would go in. It's hard. You're diagnosing. It's like being a doctor or something else. Diagnose on a thing, fix it, you think, and then it doesn't work. The whole industry would just come back in and go, oh, you know what? We fixed this, and that pointed out the fact that this other thing's broken. You need to fix this too. But there's times when my dad would fix a thing and then realize, oh, he made a mistake. That wasn't the problem. And my dad would go back and fix the problem for free. And he would bring the thing and say, I thought it was this, so I replaced it. charge you $200 for this, but the reality was it was this other thing, and I fixed it for free, and would bring the other thing that we didn't realize was broken, bring that to the guy and give it to him. And my dad would eat $500 or $400, $1,000 sometimes. He'd eat it, but he would demonstrate to that owner, hey, I'm not going to charge you. I'm going to undercharge, not overcharge you. Or if I realize I make a mistake, I'm going to make it completely right. You will always be whole. And that's the word that got out. And next thing you know, my dad began to dominate all those restaurants and gas stations and all that stuff because everybody knew. My dad could work 80 hours a week if he wanted to because everybody knew if Glenn Forster said it's yes, it's yes. If Glenn Forster says it's no, right? And God honors that. That's what God says. I promise I'll honor you for doing that. How many times through the Bible does he say that? The book of Proverbs talks about honest weights. God blesses honest weights. Yeah. But in this one, he says dead bodies are going to be everywhere. Yeah. So you think that, you shooting a move in your business isn't that big of a deal. At least you're not cheating on your wife. God goes, yeah, there's going to be dead bodies everywhere.
Right.
Right? So integrity matters, I think, is the message of this passage.
Yeah. And that's not to say that, if you're a businessman listening to this right now and that you're doing a bad business practice, that doesn't translate into you're going to wake up tomorrow and your family's going to be dead in your bed.
Yeah. Well, right? you have time to turn around.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to turn. They had 30 years to turn this around.
Yeah. It's more of a statement about God.
Judgment will come. You're not going to get away with it.
That's how. Well, I was going to say, it's definitely a look into how God feels about those things, and so we think it's not a big deal, and yet God says it's so strong of a deal. God hates sin so much that He is willing to call them out on it, and then judgment's going to come. And this was a prophesied specific for Israel. I just don't want people thinking that their dead bodies are going to literally be in their beds.
No, but I can imagine God going, "I'm going to ruin your business. You keep this up."
That's what I'm saying.
If you're claiming to be a godly person, but you're shooting a move like this, I'm going to ruin your business.
That's my point.
Right?
That's my point.
It's metaphorical.
Doesn't have to be dead bodies.
Yeah, it's metaphorical.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's great. So I think that there's several sermons in here.
Yeah.
And by the way, let me say one more thing. I had not remembered, although I've read it before, but I've not remembered that it says, "Now the Lord has sworn this oath by His own name, the pride of Israel."
Isn't that great?
I did not remember that was one of His names.
Yeah.
So God the Father has many names referred to in the Bible, and by the way, that's its own Bible study, isn't it?
Yes.
So there's how many names do you think? I've seen these on posters before. There's probably Probably over 100, maybe 100 something names.
I should know that. I've known it. I just don't remember what the number is now.
Yeah. But I think it's definitely dozens and dozens and dozens, right? I mean, if it's not 100, it's very close.
Right.
But there's different names that God has for Himself, and then there's also a lot of different names that the Son Jesus has for Himself. He's known as several different names, not nearly as many as God of the Old Testament, God the Father. But it's interesting how each name carries with it sort of like a different attribute.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
And so it sort of magnifies the different attributes of God. And in this case, He says the pride of Israel.
Yeah.
And so think about the significance of that. So if God is the pride of Israel, then what He's really highlighting here is He's highlighting He's not very proud. Right. And that God is not, that they're not respecting His name. Right. Because if He's the pride of Israel, they're dishonoring who the pride of Israel is.
That's right.
Because back then, Israel was definitely known to be the people who are worshiping the one true God, and all the way throughout the Old Testament, people associated those people with the one true God. And so the more that they reflected His attributes and, behaved and everything else, and then God would have great victories. I mean, sometimes people would fear the name of Israel. If Israel came, the people would literally just tremble because they're like, "Oh, I've heard about this people. Right. This is the God who shows up. This is the God of great miracles." And so therefore God could revel in the fact that He's the pride of Israel.
Right.
But in this particular case, when Israel is dishonoring God, so I just think it's very interesting how God chooses to call Himself by this particular name, the pride of Israel, because what He's really saying is, That's a great disrespect. It's a great dishonor. It's a great blasphemy.
He's kind of reminding them, I used to be
Right.
the focus of your world.
Right. Right.
I used to be the pride.
Yeah.
Like my grandson Rowan thinks his dad Jonathan is the toughest guy in the world. Mm-hmm. Right? Jonathan kind of is the center of Rowan's universe right now.
Yeah.
Right? And you know, Jonathan is the pride of Rowan, right? Is kind of this. It's that thing. And then he said, "Remember when it used to be that way?" And it's not that way anymore. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, that is definitely our time. So we will see you hopefully tomorrow on the Bible Guys.